For years, the tension between Afghanistan and Pakistan has just been simmering below the surface. Well, now it has completely boiled over into open conflict. What used to be a fight managed through proxies has become direct, state-on-state hostility. So today we're going to dive into what's really driving this escalating conflict and unpack what's been called Islamabad's never-ending cycle of insecurity.
Okay, let's start with this quote, because it really says it all. You have to understand, this is way more than just tough talk for the cameras. This statement from Pakistan's defense minister came right as Islamabad was launching a major military operation hitting targets deep inside Afghanistan. It was a huge signal that they were shifting from quiet, behind-the-scenes maneuvering to open military force. The message was loud and clear. The old rules are out the window.
And here's where things get really murky. A total fog of war. Just look at these casualty numbers. They are worlds apart. Islamabad is claiming massive success, saying they took out hundreds of fighters. Meanwhile, Kabul is telling a completely different story, claiming they inflicted heavy losses on the Pakistanis. The real takeaway here isn't the numbers themselves, but what they represent. A dangerously unstable border that has just entered a much more volatile phase.
To really get why this is all blowing up right now, we have to look past the latest airstrikes and ask a much bigger question. What's the historical wound here that's fueling all of this anger?
You see, the root of this conflict isn't something that happened a few years ago. It's literally a line in the sand, one that was drawn over 100 years ago by a colonial power. And that line has basically defined the troubled relationship between these two nations ever since.
This is it, the Durand Line. The British drew it up way back in 1893, and it sliced right through the heart of Pashtun tribal lands. It created this totally arbitrary border that, and this is the key part, no Afghan government has ever accepted. Not the monarchy, not the republic, and certainly not the Taliban today. This one line has basically embedded a historical grievance into the very map of the region.
So, how do we get from a line drawn in the 19th century to airstrikes today? Well, this timeline really connects the dots. When the Taliban came back to power in 2021, Pakistan honestly thought things would calm down on their border. But the exact opposite happened. Attacks by the Pakistani-Taliban, the TTP, just exploded. And as you can see, that leads directly to the retaliatory airstrikes we're seeing now.
And just look at this number. This really puts the staggering human cost for Pakistan into perspective. Over 2,400 of their security personnel killed in a single year. That's the highest number in a decade. A number like that helps you understand the immense pressure Islamabad was under, and why they finally said, our cup of patience has overflowed. So you might think, okay, it's simple. Pakistan is fighting the TTP. But it is so much messier than that. It's this incredibly tangled web of shifting alliances, shared loyalties, and, frankly, huge strategic miscalculations. Here's the really ironic twist in all of this. Pakistan supported the Afghan Taliban for years, right? And they had one big expectation. When you guys take over, you'll keep anti-Pakistan groups like the TTP in check for us. But it completely backfired. The Afghan Taliban, well, they're not eager to fight the TTP. For one, there's a shared Pashtun identity, but they're also terrified that if they push the TTP too hard, its fighters will just jump ship and join their bigger rival, ISIS-K. And the result of all this? A group that Pakistan once saw as a strategic tool has become one of its biggest security nightmares.
But if you think this is just about militants and a disputed border, there's another massive piece to this puzzle. A regional giant whose shadow hangs over absolutely everything. India. To really get what's driving Pakistan's thinking, you have to understand this one core fear: strategic encirclement. It's this deep-seated anxiety in Islamabad about being trapped between their arch-rival India on their eastern border and a potentially hostile India-friendly Afghanistan on their western border.
And lately, that fear has been dialed up to 11. Islamabad has gone so far as to accuse the Taliban government of becoming an India colony, especially after Afghanistan's foreign minister made a big visit to New Delhi. For Pakistan, this isn't just diplomacy, it's their worst-case scenario starting to come true. So those airstrikes? Yeah, they were aimed at the TTP, but you better believe they were also a huge, blinking warning light for the Taliban. Don't get too cozy with India.
So why should we care about this if we're not in Pakistan or Afghanistan? Because what happens on this border doesn't stay on this border. The instability here risks sending shockwaves across the entire region.
Let's just break down what's really on the line here. On the economic front, you're talking about crucial trade routes and massive infrastructure projects, like the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, being put at risk. On the human side, there's the fear of a new refugee crisis. And strategically, all this chaos is like pouring fuel on the fire for other groups like ISIS-K and Baloch separatists, which threatens everyone's stability and could derail major regional projects.
And all of this brings us to the central argument here. This crisis didn't just happen by accident. It's the predictable and, frankly, inevitable result of a policy that has trapped Pakistan in a vicious cycle of its own making.
The analysis here is just so sharp. It basically says that these deep historical security problems can't be fixed with bombs. Blaming outsiders and launching occasional airstrikes might feel like you're doing something, but it's like putting a Band-Aid on a bullet wound. It doesn't actually solve the fundamental issues.
So, what's the alternative? Well, the argument is that real lasting peace isn't going to come from playing this complicated chess game of managing different militant groups. No, it can only come from a fundamental shift in policy. We're talking about genuine political talks, credible promises, and actual regional cooperation. It's a call for Pakistan to look inward, not just to lash out.
And that really is the ultimate question, isn't it? The current path of military strikes and proxy games has only made the crisis deeper. The alternative requires a complete overhaul of decades of policy. Whether Islamabad can or even wants to make that kind of change, well, that remains the great unanswered question for the future of this incredibly volatile region.